We have breaking news this morning from CNBC. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey is stepping down in the near future. A co-founder of the social media behemoth, Dorsey became CEO in 2015. Details are still developing, but Bloomberg is reporting that since the news broke, Twitter shares jumped about 11% pre-market. Here to weigh in is Newsweek deputy opinion editor and author of Bad News: How Woke Media is Undermining Democracy, Batya Ungar-Sargon. Batya, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Dorsey might require a little bit of meditation on that fact that the shares jumped 11%. On the other hand, he might take some solace in it, if he was, resisting, different types of engagement strategies that might make the place more toxic, but would increase its value to shareholders. And he was holding them back, and now maybe the market thinks, with Dorsey there, it will be the fully toxic place that is its destiny.
Yeah, Twitter's so depressing because it's one of those places where it's so clear that the more toxic it is, the higher its valuation is. I think to me, the big question here is whether there's going to be more or less woke censoriousness on Twitter as a result of Dorsey leaving, right? Was he a bulwark against even more censoriousness against conservatives, or was he actually a person who was pushing them? And now the fact that, some people are saying he's going to step down because of the Republican mega donor who bought big shares in Twitter is going to actually be combating that. We know that Jack Dorsey gave $10 million to, the king of wokeism, Ibrahim X. Kendi, right? So I think that's really the really big question for me.
I'm concerned because, while I do not agree with a lot of, his donation to Kendi was kind of insane. I think there is some evidence that he was a force for free speech compared to other people who work at Twitter. He was very kind of blunt and straightforward in some of his appearances before Capitol Hill, with the Hunter Biden laptop story. He said, yeah, that was a really bad call. We should not have done that. And he has kind of signaled not a perfect one by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he's signaled in a similar way to Zuckerberg, actually. There's some indication that they have more of an idea that their platforms should have a range of views should be permissible, and that is at odds, I suspect, with some of the younger, more kind of wokester people. Is that your sense, Batya? I'm curious for your take.
Well, I've only ever had one tweet censored. It got the little bar on it that says, are you sure you want to proceed? There's something in here. And I'll tell you what it was, and you'll tell me what you think of this. We had hosted a debate at Newsweek about climate change. And the title of the tweet of the debate was not even, is climate change real? It sort of took as a given that climate change is real. And it said, is climate change an emergency? And that, just asking that question and having both sides represented in the debate was censored by Twitter. And I was very shocked. Before that, I was a bit of a skeptic. The conservatives are always like, oh, we're being censored, And then I saw that and I was like, whoa, that's a question about something that takes really kind of not even the other side of this, right? Yeah. So that kind of really, I think it's very hard after the fact to say that it was a mistake with the Hunter Biden laptop. It's very easy to say that after the fact. Would Jack Dorsey have made a different decision having had the same question posed to him again? I don't think so.
Do we know who is going to even be replacing him? Do we have any indication?
I don't think so, no. But so what if it's the person who censored your tweet, right? Because that wasn't Dorsey himself. It's he's not signing off on these kinds of decisions. But and probably they're not hiring into. I mean, who knows what they're doing? But there's the people further down in the company have more desire to crush speech they disagree with than Dorsey does. That's my fear.
Right. So I want to ask you guys something, because this is something I think about a lot, which is obviously all of our lives are so much better since Trump was kicked off Twitter. And yet it seems to me also clear that was a really terrible, wrong thing to do. But I also can't help but feel like America is so much better. Every day there's a moment where I'm like, Trump would be tweeting about this and making it so much worse. What do you guys think about this?
I think it was fine for them to kick off. I think it was right to suspend him for the January 6th stuff in the moment they made that decision. It's not a perfect decision, but I think it is perfectly defensible. I don't know how I feel about keeping him off the platform indefinitely, and they probably, again, it's their company. They can do whatever they want. Right. I think I would argue that he probably should be let back on, but in the heat of the moment, with people ransacking the Capitol, what they did was not illegitimate.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a public square, so it should be, I don't think people should be censored unless they're actually saying something illegal or, trying to commit a crime. But that's and I feel that way about all of social media.
Yeah, and I agree with that too, and for that reason, that's why it is a little bit discomforting to acknowledge that the air does feel cleaner, like without him on the platform. But that doesn't mean that I support the decision. Right. But it is an uncomfortable fact that, yeah, it does feel like you shut down a coal plant that was operating next door. And as a journalist, I had him on alerts, so it wasn't just that you're seeing everything that he creates every day, but I was seeing everything that he created. The other discomforting part, though, and now I don't have to think about him so much because he's not in the news. He will be again in the near future. But for a while after January 6th, it was disconcerting not to know precisely what he was thinking about at every moment.
Yeah.
Because his Twitter feed was this window into every. You knew you didn't need to read any of these tell-all books because he told you everything right there on Twitter. And so you knew exactly how he was going to react to something almost before he did. Having him go away for a while then starts creating, what's he up to? Because he's up to something.
The other thing I wanted to mention about Dorsey stepping down, this is kind of interesting. Twitter is kind of alone in terms of a mainstream social media site. In one of its policies, Twitter, unlike Facebook, Instagram, allows pornography, like hardcore pornography is allowed on Twitter, not allowed on the other social media, not allowed on YouTube. It would be interesting to me if they get a new CEO and a new change in direction. I bet that's the first policy to go. What do you think about that, Batya?
That's really interesting. Something that I would love to see, I don't know how you would address this, but, it recently came out that 92% of all tweets are tweeted by, 10% of the tweeters, and, 69% of that 10% are Democrats, right?
By the four of us.
Yeah. It's one of those things that it looks like it's democratic. It feels like it's democratic to have politicians paying so much attention to Twitter, but it's not actually. There's like 10% of Americans are on there all the time. A lot of them have like white-collar jobs like ours that demand that they tweet, right, and that they pay attention to Twitter. And so I feel like that it's such a perfect encapsulation of one of our problems as a nation, which is that there's so much attention paid to a 10%, a top 10%, an elite, whatever it is, and then we act like that's somehow democratic or that we know what people want or what people are thinking.
Yeah.
That is one of the biggest problems with Twitter kind of running the world. A lot of companies will cater to whatever the Twitter mob is saying. No, there's outrage, so I have to stop doing this, I have to do that, or I have to fire this person or change the name of something. And that is a huge problem that Twitter, I think, has brought forward, which is that this small group of elites are actually running a lot of what is happening in the world just because of outrage that they're able to kind of facilitate on Twitter.
Yeah. This happened with the blogosphere in the early 2000s. There was a sense among politicians that the blogosphere, represented a voice of the people, and you could have a blog post that got 3,000 views. But if 1,500 of those were on Capitol Hill, it could be extraordinarily influential.
And this is how we get the tyranny of Ezra Klein.
There you go.
No good. No good. We got to leave it there. Batya, thank you so much for being with us. Her book is Bad News, nicely behind you. Got a nice setup. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
And we'll have more Rising after this.